fuck NMG. I'm done with it. I'd be sitting there in the welding lab trying to focus on learning this really difficult task. And I'm thinking about my Link to the Past movement. I already knew that I wasn't going to be able to go to Phoenix literally the day after I met her. We can't pay it back because the people that taught us are already better. So the only thing we can do is pay it forward. I want to say right out of the gate that I get like 10 times more nervous for these things than I need to. So I'll settle in a little bit as we go. But yeah, that's pretty much it as far as Link to the Past. I've done a few big tutorial projects, and it's kind of what I'm known for as far as that. But I guess I kind of want to explain how I got to where I am. And so I guess the best place to start is from the beginning, really.
Sure.
So want to give a shout out to my grandparents going back to the mid 90s. They kind of sparked my interest in competitive gaming in the first place. So in our household, everybody played Tetris competitively.
Oh, cool.
So going back to the time I was like 6 years old, I'd visit my grandparents for a couple of weeks, stay with them over the summer. And we had a Tetris leaderboard in their basement. And they always had karaoke at the house. So everybody would be there singing. My family's all musicians. And everybody would get their turn on the Tetris while we were down there hanging out. And we had this leaderboard that we would like write your name in pencil when you got a new high score.
That's awesome.
Totally. And my grandparents were kick ass at Tetris. Like my grandma had a 400,000, grandpa had a 500,000, which is not laughable by any means.
This is NES Tetris?
Classic NES Tetris.
Yeah. Those are really good scores for like not being a, like modern competitive player.
For anybody that's not familiar, like when you get to 130 lines and it bumps up the speed at level 19, anything over a 500,000 transition score is like top tier. Like you can be competitive with that. So for being like a 60-year-old man and being able to hit legitimately competitive benchmarks. So that kind of sparked my interest in competitive gaming because obviously I had to practice in the off season because I wanted to be better than them. I just remember being like 12 years old and grinding at home, and I was finally able to get to level 23. Yeah, I really loved the competition and the energy that came out of that experience.
That's awesome. Do you have an NES Tetris PB? Like, do you know your best run?
623,000.
Very good.
I tried to get back into it a few years ago, like just before pre-COVID, and ended up tying my top score to the exact 1,000.
Wow. Nice. Also, for anybody who's listening and not watching the video, I can see a piano and 4 guitars in the background. Probably some of them are basses, but
yeah,
very musical guy. Not telling a joke about that one.
Absolutely. Yeah, I come from a highly musical background. Both of my parents were very music oriented. My dad was in a band, mother was a great singer, and then when my mom and stepdad got together, my stepdad was a very good drummer, touring musician.
Wow.
They both performed music for a living for most of my life growing up. And like I said, my grandparents got in on it too. When they got older into retirement age, they started doing karaoke as like a side gig. So we would all get together and sing. Very cool family to be a part of.
Yeah, that's great. So then what, after the NES Tetris, how did you end up getting interested in speedrunning?
Well, kind of continuing on from there, I got my GameCube when I was 14, 2003, and got into Melee. But I didn't really have anyone to compete with, so I kind of did the thing where you like play on your own team against 3 level 9 CPUs. I discovered Twin Galaxies around that time, and I would look at high scores for things that I was interested in playing, and I kind of figured out this exploit where if you play Dr. Mario on adventure mode and just spam the cape at everything, nothing dies. So you can get them up to like 999% and just farm score infinitely. So I was like, well, I got 2 million points as Dr. Mario. According to Twin Galaxies, that's a world record. So there you go. And then...
Did you send them a VHS tape of it?
I did not send them a VHS. However, I was recording VHS about a year or two after that, doing my Tetris grind. That's when I originally got the 623.
Hmm.
I still have the VHS somewhere, I'm pretty sure, if it didn't get lost moving. I looked up the Tetris leaderboard on Twin Galaxies, and mine, if I had submitted that tape, would have been the highest time listed at the time.
Hmm.
I later found out that around that time, maybe a year or two before, is when someone actually first produced the first known video of a max out on VHS. And that was shortly before they started the Classic Tetris World Championship, where like the qualifying players, like 600,000 would have been in easily. So by 2004 standards, I was an okay Tetris player.
Yeah, for sure.
I kind of had always been interested in like the Pokemon Gen 1 and 2 glitches. I remember like being 12 years old and we had gold and silver, and you would do like the held item trades where you would turn the game off in the middle of the trade. It would duplicate your master ball and stuff like that. The Mew glitch. And come to find out, like, there's this one trainer after the second gym where if you step on this square and pause the game and then fly and then get into the battle and die and go to this certain square or whatever after this, you can get Mew
Mm.
just in the game without trading for it or going to an event or anything. So we were doing that when I was like 13, 14. And the way that I actually discovered speedrunning really was I was looking up YouTube videos of how to do Pokemon Gen 1 glitches, and this was in like summer 2014. I had actually just heard of Twitch very recently before that because of the Twitch Plays Pokemon hype that happened
Oh yeah.
over that past winter. So like Twitch wasn't even on my radar. I had no idea what speedrunning was, but I was just looking up glitches and I found this guy named Worster that did a glitched run of Pokemon Red where he does a similar setup with the trainer fly glitch, but after the first town, and he's able to instantly get a level 1 Nidoking because you get this Nidoking at level 2 with the way you set up the glitch, and then it actually has negative experience points, so when you level it up, it underflows and instantly becomes level 100, and you get this like 5 minutes into the game.
Oh wow, that's funny.
So I go down this rabbit hole of glitched Pokemon runs, which eventually led me to AGDQ 2014, where I found a speed run of Jaden playing NMG in 127. So this is where we kind of get into. I had a bit of a personal vendetta with the game because, like I explained, when my mom and stepdad got together, my stepdad had two older sons and they had a Super Nintendo. This was in 93. They had A Link to the Past. So me being 4 years old and wanting to do what my older brothers were doing, I wanted to play A Link to the Past, but they always told me, well, you're not old enough, you can't read, you wouldn't understand this. I was like, okay, well, I'll show you. So it ended up being my favorite game over the years. And this was the one game that I would always go back to and play once a year. Naturally, I find here's this A Link to the Past speedrun. This guy's doing it in an hour and 27 minutes. And it's like, holy shit, I want to do that.
And now you can.
Exactly. So I had this shitty laptop and it just barely ran my stream setup. And over the next 4 months or so, I got down to a 140.
Were you on emulator at this time?
I was on emulator at the time. I was using a Xbox 360 controller.
Nice.
I had a really great time with that. Met some awesome people. Like WQ was one of the first people to ever pop into my stream and be like, "What's up? Good luck." Met Fruit Bats through that because he was learning the game at the same time, and we were actually racing. Me, him, and our other friend Jayhawk were racing to sub 140 all at the same time. Ended up doing that until right about the time the 2015 spring tournament came around, and just kind of fell off the hobby. I was kind of hitting this wall where I hadn't PB'd in 3 weeks. And in my mind, at least, it was like, Well, I'm playing this game 20 hours a week and I'm not PBing. So if I want to be better at this game, I need to put in more than 20 hours a week. And I'm really not ready to commit to that. And I'm kind of burnt out, which, those things turned out to not be true. But in any case, I didn't play the game for like 2 more years after that.
What was your PB at this time?
It was like a low 140.
Okay.
Yeah, it was like right there.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't break through.
Huh. Do you remember enough about what you were doing at the time to know why? Because like breaking through the 140 barrier is not generally a big obstacle for players, but obviously there was a lot less knowledge back then and so on.
It was just like, I want to say I had a 133 sum of best at the time.
Oh, you just like couldn't
And
put it together.
it's just one of those things where you're on like a -4 minute pace, but something always is
Yeah.
a total disaster. And it's like, yeah, I couldn't keep my shit together and get through an entire run. So
Gotcha.
yeah, so I got away from the hobby for a few years, and I had a lot of people telling me that pursuing that wasn't good for me.
Hmm.
So to kind of provide some context, I was in this band at the time, and the guy that was running that, he's like, well, it's not good for you to stay up late and play video games. You need to like think about more important things. And my boss and my roommate were telling me the same thing. I was kind of in a shitty situation where a lot of the people that I was close to were not good influences.
Well, that's interesting because I mean, it sounds like they wanted you to get more sleep and like do your job, which isn't really necessarily a bad influence.
Absolutely,
I mean, I don't know the
but
full context here, but
the full context is kind of like I was useful to them, but they were not useful to me, and I was kind of at an age where I didn't really have any direction
yeah, I
in
see.
life.
Yeah,
So they were trying to push me in a direction that was beneficial to them, and it was like, stop coming in tired so you can get your work done type of deal.
right.
I had this manager. I was in cooking at the time. I actually did cooking for like 13 years professionally. And from like the time I graduated to about 10 years later, I had the same roommate for like 8 years of that, and he was the kitchen manager where I worked.
Hmm.
I'll just say that I was treated pretty badly by these people, and I more or less got bullied into not pursuing this thing that I was enjoying.
That sucks.
A couple of years go by, and I realized that I really missed being around these people because I met so many wonderful people in the NMG community, and they were all very supportive and very excited about my progress in doing runs and everything. And I always said that I would come back for the sub 140. So early 2017, after taking a 2 year break, I grinded it out for a couple of months, got the sub 140, and just the overall response from people being excited that I had come back was such a positive thing. And I really enjoyed the influence of, just the vibe of the community. Like these were people that were very passionate about something, very good at it, and just a really supportive, positive community at the time.
Who were you like hanging out with? Who were the big community members at that time, or the people in your group? You mentioned a couple people like WQ and Jayhawk, but was that like I just don't really know who was around at what times, basically.
Fruit bats, you may have
Right.
heard of Adam Vivitron.
No, I don't remember the name.
He was he was kind of a big streamer for like a year or so, 2014, 2015. And he was one of those people that just had this infectious energy. And even though he was a new streamer, he would regularly get like 30 to 40 viewers on his NMG streams. And he was like the go-to spot to hang out
That's
at the
cool.
time. And you had people like DK, Blunt. Very cool time to get into A Link to the Past. There was so much happening at the time. There was SRL races. Like you could fire up a Master Sword race on SRL at any time of the day or night, and people would join. just a very cool time to get into the game.
Yeah.
I really found that I missed everything about it. So I was like, okay, well, I said I was going to get the sub 140. I'm going to do it. So put in the work. I got it, got down to a 137.
Big jump.
And thank you, just very quickly fell off. Again, because it was for the same reasons. I felt very conflicted about things in my personal life and didn't want to dive too deeply into it. And so I took a break for another year, came back to streaming in the spring of 2018. And this time I kind of had it figured out, and I was like, well, I think this hobby and these influences are better than the people and influences and things I've got going on around me right now. At this point, I was really just looking for a way out of my hometown. I had been feeling kind of trapped there for a long time because I was in this situation where I had the same roommate for 8 years, and we were both working this dead end job that we were miserable at. And the only thing we were doing was get up, go to work, go to the bar, have a drink, sleep it off, do it all over again. And this guy was like 8 years older than me, still doing the same thing. And the other guy that we worked with was like 20 years older than that and still doing the same thing. And I'm like, this fucking blows. I need to figure something out and get the hell out of here. So I was like, well, if I'm going to do whatever I want, I'm going to go back to speedrunning. So I finally got back into it, got down to a 134, and all of the hardware and stuff that I had bought like way before, I finally switched over to that and got down to like a 132 instantly. So then really made the push for sub 90. And just the strangest thing happened over that summer. My roommate that had been working this job for like 11 years just literally up and disappeared one day.
Did he come back? Did you find him?
He sent a text that said, I don't live there anymore, don't contact me.
Holy shit.
Didn't give us a forward address, phone number, nothing. He just loaded his car up with everything that could fit in it, and he was gone.
Huh.
Yeah, truly bizarre.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of backstory with that that'd be way too much to explain. But I was kind of I had the house all to myself and was doing my own thing, and I finally quit that job that summer, and I had worked there for like 10 years. So I kind of just like, I took about 6 weeks to just sit and figure it out. And I speedran a shitload during that summer.
Nice.
Finally got the sub 90. Yeah. And I was able to make some connections within the community that eventually led me to figuring out how I was going to get out of there. But we'll get to that in a little bit.
So real quick on the speedrunning timeline, I think I recall you saying in the past that you created Noob Splice to help you get the sub 90. Is that correct?
No, it's kind of the opposite how it worked out. So after I got the sub 90, I kind of had the idea that I really didn't like how everybody was trying to do like the hardest strats that they knew. And I wanted to put together a splice that would demonstrate how to get to sub 90, but without doing anything hard. But I specifically did it right after I got the sub 90 because I wanted to be able to demonstrate what someone at that skill level would actually do.
I see.
And I specifically wanted to complete the recording before I got 127.
Right. Hit that right in that band that people are targeting.
Exactly.
That's cool.
I wanted it to be as authentic as possible.
Yeah.
So I just did that to the best of my ability, and that was like my first real true screen grind for the whole game. And you go through that at that point and realize like, okay, I have 128, but I still don't know what to do in the hookshot chest room. And it's like, how did I get this far without having any idea what to do here? Yeah, so I took some time off, did Noob Splice, and got down to like 126 in the months leading up to my first AGDQ, which was the next year.
What year are we at now? Would that be 2019?
Yeah.
Um,
And
sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
okay, what were you gonna say?
I was just gonna ask about AGDQ. I'd assume you didn't have a run in. You were just hanging out.
Yeah, it was just hanging out, and I actually ended up bringing my younger brother Parkour Chicken along with me to AGDQ, and
Cool.
it's it's such a game changing experience to walk in there and just see CRTs as far as you can see, and just all these cool people, and it's like you can sit down next to anybody and be like, "Tell me about your speed run." It's like walking into Willy Wonka's factory. Something kind of interesting that came up like right after I finished Noob's Place. There was this project called Zelda Sanctuary that popped up, and this person ended up in my Discord server somehow. They recruited a lot of top talent in the Zelda community, and they were trying to put together something to rival Zelda Dungeon, but targeted towards speedrunners. So I joined this Discord server, and there were people like Linkus, Richard Sage, that were in this Discord server, and it's like, holy shit, I'm involved in something huge. Let's go. This is going to be the next iteration of like I can make some cool tutorials for the game or whatever. And this person was really excited about putting this project together and like worked sleepless days and nights for months to make this thing happen, and it ended up just kind of fizzling out because the vision for what they were trying to create was really bizarre in a way.
Hmm.
They were trying to recreate all of these existing resources from the ground up with their logos and their branding.
Hmm.
And it was like, well, I already made this thing. It took me 100 hours. I'm not going to do it again so you can put your logos on it.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of
So,
weird.
yeah, it was very bizarre. So that thing kind of fizzled out. And right as I was getting out of this project, Fricker was talking about how he wanted to remake the advanced NMG tutorial because at the time this was, I don't remember what year because it was one of my gap years, but I'd say probably like 2016, 17. Downtime Death had made this advanced NMG tutorial that was just like 14 hours of unedited stream.
Yeah.
And Fricker was really wanting to do a tutorial at the time, and me being like a 128 runner, I was like, well, I know how to edit video. I'm your target audience for this project. Teach me everything you know. That's how Fricker tutorial became a thing. We hit the ground running with that like after AGDQ happened. And once we were in the final stages of getting the escape tutorial put together, we had Greenham come in as sort of an advisor and just be like, look at our script, look at what we got so far, and maybe put some chill beats behind it. This was, I don't know what year he started Forever Grind FM, but it had to be like, if not 2019, very shortly after.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I didn't get really involved in the community until late 2019, and FGFM was either new at that point or like started shortly after. Because I remember it being new around the time I started. So yeah, it
Yeah.
must have been
Okay.
around that time.
Yeah, so we got Greenham on board, and over the next couple of segments, it eventually became known as the FMG tutorial, and uh, I think Devdo made our intro, which is totally badass. I love the intro. Yeah, we made really good progress up to like Ice Palace, I guess, over the next 6 months or so. Not sure what to say about it too much beyond that, but I don't know, it ended up being dragged out over like a year and a half. We didn't finish it until like summer 2020.
Yeah, I remember you guys previewing the later episodes, debuting them.
Hmm.
What caused it to take so long? And one thing I have noticed from rewatching bits and pieces of it is that it seems like your editing standards improved quite a lot. Like Escape and Eastern and maybe even Desert have a lot of Fricker saying, well, you go this way and stuff, and it gets like a lot tighter, much more like tightly scripted stuff like that as it goes on from what I remember anyway.
Yeah, I would say, well, I don't have too many details on the Hera session because Hera was the first one that Greenham edited fully himself.
Oh, okay, cool.
But starting from the Aga Tower on, it was like we're gonna have an actual script for you to read from, and before that, for Desert Palace, I think he gave me like 2 hours of recordings, and it ended up being like a 40-minute video. So like literally two-thirds of it was cut because it was like retakes or
Right.
he was just kind of spitballing it as he was doing it. So now it's like fully scripted and more concise. But I didn't really like the effect that it had on the feel of the video because it was like too impersonal. I almost wanted him to like ad lib and provide some more commentary about it in the moment instead of just being like, I'm gonna say these exact words. Felt less organic in a way.
I
But
mean, how do you feel about it now? Because you sort of stuck with that style, I think.
yeah, we did, and I think we reached a compromise where we just put a lot more words into the script going
Hmm.
forward.
Gotcha.
But it did make the process much more tedious. Like I remember counting up all of the work that I did for GT, and it ended up being like 80 hours just on my end.
Yeah.
Whereas when we first were talking about it, we were like, okay, well, we're going to put out one video a week until this is done. Obviously, that's not possible when you're working at that level of detail.
Yeah.
So our vision for the project definitely evolved over the course of it. And you get burnout putting that many hundreds of hours into a thing, especially that you're not getting paid for.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's a huge gift that you gave to the community and at great cost to yourself.
I kind of look at like some of the other similar projects that have come along over the years. Like there were how many iterations of God's Place, and then I was listening to the Blunt episode the other day, and him talking about how he was inspired to do that, and basically took like 2 to 3 months off, and it was a grind for personal reasons, but he also made this incredible resource for the community. And Greenham also did, Ham Splice, and spent all of those hours logging his videos and room times into the individual room leaderboards, and that's a fantastic resource as well. And he did like the hardcore and the like less hardcore edit. All of this stuff
Yeah.
exists because people donated their time. Yeah, definitely a super worthwhile passion project, and that was the one thing that we said from the start was we wanted this to be like the standard for 10 years. So we're not gonna cut corners on it. But towards the end, it got to be too much of a grind, and we were kind of like bickering because we wanted it to be done, but we wanted it to be done right, and so not gonna speak too much to that because just isn't necessary. We're all cool now, and we eventually got it done.
And it's already stood for what, 4 or 5 years? You're halfway
Yeah,
there?
exactly. And like little things have come up, and we always said that we were gonna do like small updates, but never happened. It's good as it is, and kind of same thing with Noob Splice, where I wanted to make like a 1.1 or like a version 2 where I actually fully completed an edit that had text explanations for every single room.
Wow.
And I remember like looking at the YouTube metrics and seeing that like it only gets a few views per month, and I'm like, and it had all these other things that I didn't like about it, and I was like, I'm just gonna scrap the whole thing and redo it. And I don't know. It's really easy to be too critical of your own work.
Do you still
So
have that video? I bet people would love that if you made it public again.
yeah, I do.
Because I know people who would love that, I think. I mean, if you hate it too much to let it be out there, I understand, but I think that would be cool.
I could I could probably put it out there.
Yeah. So anyway, so this was around, I guess, early in 2019. You started on the FMG project, but that's not all you were doing. You were still running the game at that point, right?
Yeah. I guess I got down to like a 125 over the course of FMG production, which takes me about to like COVID summer 2020. I only ever got down to 125.08, which was in March of 2021. And we'll get to that, but I've made several attempts to break that barrier.
Yeah.
But yeah, the whole COVID era was very tumultuous, I would say, because, well, we got a lot of new people introduced into the community around that time. And one of them was Satan Spawn. She was off of work at that time because she was a tech at a community college welding lab in the Detroit area. She was watching Eddie's streams a lot. He was, you know, doing the 123 grinds at the time, and that was kind of like the place to hang out because Zelna and WQ had pretty much retired by that point. So I noticed this viewer Satan Spawn asking a lot of really good questions, and I was very active in the community at that time, and I would do training sessions with anybody. You know, so I see somebody that's new and active in the community, I want to find out who they are and get to know them better and help teach them the game. So we ended up hitting it off after I watched her stream. You know, she was listening to like Rancid and drinking out of a 32-ounce crowler, like spike bracelet, the whole bit, right?
Yeah.
So, like, holy shit, let's go. Yeah, we ended up hitting it off really well and started doing these weekly NMG training sessions. Because at the time, she was playing on Switch and using the rewind function. And I was like, okay, well, let me get you set up with a proper emulator and practice act, and we're gonna go through, and I'll show you a couple segments and how I would practice them. And we had a really good time. So it ended up being a weekly event. We would go through like 2-ish segments, and fast forward like a couple months later, this was June of June or July of 2020, and we were going to do the last training session for GT and Ganon. I had been in talks with Fricker at the time because he was kind of conflicted about like his situation in Phoenix. He wasn't sure if he wanted to stay or if he wanted to go back home to Minnesota. And he hit me up and was like, no, wait, that's not actually how it happened. He had offered me the year before, he offered me a place to stay in Phoenix. And it was then in like June of 2020 where I was like, you know what? I'm really sick of my situation in Ohio. My brother lives 15 minutes away from downtown Phoenix, and I got a really good hookup there and an opportunity to go back to school if I want to. And I think that'd be a really good setup. Can I move to Phoenix? And he was like, hell yeah, let's go. We'll get you set up. And this was also like right when we were about to launch the last segment of FMG. This whole thing was kind of wrapping up all at the same time. I had just quit my job, and I told Satan, I'm going to come see you on my way through because Michigan is like on the way ish to Phoenix. So we had this whole thing planned out where I was going to drive out there in a couple weeks. And we had kind of really hit it off in a big way. And we're like, actually, well, maybe I could see you sooner. So came out about a week and a half earlier than I had planned. And like I said, I really wasn't into my job at the time. So I actually ended up not showing up for my last day there and ended up staying a day longer than I meant to. And at this point already, I already knew that I wasn't going to be able to go to Phoenix.
Oh, really?
Like, literally the day after I met her.
Wow.
And so I had delayed a couple days because I was supposed to send some things to Fricker for finalizing the segment, and he hadn't heard from me for a couple days, and I actually called him when I was on the road on the way back, and I was like, I'm gonna need you to give me a little bit of time to think about it and figure out what I want to do. And in my mind, like, I had already made the decision, I just needed some space to figure it out. That It crushed him a lot. He felt pretty betrayed
That sucks.
for a couple of different reasons, because I had already committed to go there, and Fricker was kind of into her a little bit too at the time, and they didn't have like a really well established connection, but he had expressed interest, and then this whole thing happened, and it's like, well, fuck me twice, I guess.
Yeah.
So
It's rough.
that was really rough. And we didn't talk for a long time. I don't think I really patched things up with him until like a year after that. Yeah, Satan was on paid leave for the semester. So she came out to my house for an entire week the week after. And at that point, things were pretty well established. And a couple weeks later, came out to Detroit to see her again, and we did that. Switched off every couple of weeks for a few months, and ended up getting an apartment together in the Ann Arbor area after we had been like officially together for 3 months. And it was like, well, it's kind of fast to sign a year lease with somebody that you've only been seeing long distance for 3 months, but we're pretty sure about it, so
It worked out, right?
it worked out. So 4 years later, here we are. It's a very interesting year, 2020.
Yeah, a lot of stuff that year. I guess you quit your job, planned to move, did move to a totally different place, fell in love. It's a banner year. Not for most people. 2020 wasn't a banner year for most people, but
No, not at all.
went all right for you.
Yeah, uh, gotta say, I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. So I started going to welding school in the fall of 2020, and tried to keep up with the NMG grind in the meantime. And I was able to get a couple more PBs after that. But when I started to really get into the meat of welding school, I found that NMG just occupies so much mental bandwidth that I'd be sitting there in the welding lab trying to focus on learning this really difficult task, and I'm thinking about my Link to the Past movement,
Right. Yeah.
and it's like I can't be splitting my attention to be on the 1-2-4 grind. It's like you need to live and breathe Link to the Past in some capacity.
Yeah.
And over the spring, I was like, okay, this is it. I have to put this down until I'm done with school. And I've made a couple of pushes for it here and there. Like every time I would get summer break, I'd try to push at it for a month or so, and that's not really enough to break through. But
Last summer, I think you did a big push. And I think you were actually playing well, although you didn't end up breaking through. But it sounded like you kind of wanted that to be your last push at it. Was that right? Is that still the case? You haven't played this summer, I don't think. We'll get to that later, but I think you've actually been playing other games more recently.
yeah, I kind of felt that way at the time. Well, we'll back up a little bit because I want to go back to how I kind of got involved with Zelda Dungeon.
Sure, yeah.
So, like, Masi's the owner of Zelda Dungeon, kind of got involved with us because he was speedrunning A Link to the Past over summer 2020, and we got to be friends with him. And he was aware of FMG Tutorial, and he actually made us an offer to purchase it for Zelda Dungeon, which was very cool. And I definitely was pushing for that to happen. Although in hindsight, I kind of like the fact that it's a free community resource instead of owned by a corporation. But all that aside, uh, me, Fricker, and Greenham were kind of disputing ownership rights at the time because we had a shared channel, and it was originally hosted on Fricker's channel, and Greenham had decided to make a FMG channel and post the videos on there, and there was this whole ownership dispute already aside from agreeing to sell it. So that never panned out. But what did come out of it was ended up being invited to the Zelda Dungeon Marathon the next year and went out to Chicago because it was only like a 5-hour drive. So went out and host this big marathon for all the ZD staff, and there's like 40 people that stay in this guy's house for a week. Big gamer meetup, but they're all like co-workers. Fantastic. We really liked being affiliated with these people. So I was like, well, I'm not really a fan of all the drama going on in A Link to the Past right now. That was around the time the Eddie G Cub thing happened. So I was like, fuck NMG. I'm done with it. I'm hanging out with Zelda Dungeon. So I really wanted to expand my repertoire of games that I could play for the marathon. So ended up learning Skyward Sword HD, Zelda 2, eventually now Zelda 1, which we actually were learning at the same time, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Wind Waker HD glitchless. Eventually, I kind of decided that I want to do like a mega marathon of all of the NMG categories for all of the console games. Because Masi's had done like a similar thing for the 35th anniversary where he just did like a 35-hour speedrun, and I was like,
Ugh.
okay, that's cool. I want to do that. So I kind of decided like I want to get to the point where I'm decently intermediate at all of these games in a row, which is this gargantuan task for now 11 games. So that kind of occupied the spot that used to be my NMG speedrunning interest, because I could do something that was less mentally intensive than working on my NMG movement while I was going to school. Yeah, over the like late winter, early spring this year, finally finished all my classes, and I was like, this is the moment. This is my like graduation present to me. I'm gonna go for 124. I kind of had it planned out to where like I wanted to learn another speed run. I wanted to learn Wind Waker HD for the marathon in June. So I was like, okay, well, after end of April, I'm gonna stop playing NMG no matter what. And I really hit the ground running. I did like an 80-hour screen grind, starting to see some really good progress. with like new best times ever. I was like minus 40 on PB a bunch of times
Dang.
and was getting to this point where like anytime I could pop off and get like a 124.20, got down to like 123 or like 122 4x sum of best. So it's like, and I had it all like spreadsheet and everything. Like, what are all of the times sum of best wise that everybody had on their first 124? And I was like 30 seconds faster than the average.
Yeah.
And I'm like the most overdue 124 player of all time.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, plugging away, and I'm like approaching 3 months in, and I'm like 260 hours in, and the burnout is really starting to set in at that point. And I'm like, well, I really need to step back and take a break, but I also want to be done with this grind in 3 to 4 weeks. So it's really not reasonable to take a break and then pursue it and still expect to do anything without significant time pressure. Also, just genuinely wasn't enjoying it.
Yeah.
I was putting too much pressure on myself. At the time, I stepped away from it and said, "This isn't fun. I'm never doing this again." But you know, having 6 months to be away from it, it kind of starts to creep back in the back of your mind, like, "Hey, this thing is still here."
Yeah. So you think you might come back again someday?
At the very least, it's not a priority.
Yeah, fair.
You know, True Blue was 37, 38 when he got his 124, so time is not an issue. It's something that I definitely did think about in the few days leading up to this interview, where like I have conflicting feelings and thoughts about it, and I kind of need to sort them out, and I'm undecided, honestly. I know it's not a very satisfying answer, but I'm undecided.
Fair enough. I'll dig into that a little bit more, but we should go ahead and wrap up your story. We're close to the present day now.
Yeah, that takes us up to a few months ago, really. So, uh, I guess as far as recent events, as of this summer, Zelda Dungeon is working on some new speedrun related content. And okay, so the thing you've got to understand about the Zelda Dungeon crew is they are the most hardcore Zelda enthusiasts. And they can speedrun, but they're not they've never been directly affiliated with the speedrun communities. But they know some tech, they know some routes, and some of them are quite good. I've kind of been recruited as like a speedrun consultant of sorts. So it's like here's our vision, here's our direction, and I kind of look at it and say, okay, let's think of this in terms of like how a speedrunner is going to perceive this and use it, and what purpose does this serve that isn't being served in some capacity already, and is it high enough quality that a speedrunner is going to use it and recommend it to their friends. That's kind of where I'm at with that, and we've got the Echoes of Wisdom launch coming up. Actually, it launches in Australia at 5 a.m. your time. So,
Oh, tonight?
yeah.
Oh, nice.
So, fun fact, if you change your region on your Switch to Australia, New Zealand, make a new profile, and then purchase the game with that profile, you can technically play the game as early as 5 a.m. tomorrow.
I will
Just
not
don't
be doing that, but thanks for the tip.
I may or may not be playing Echoes of Wisdom all day tomorrow since I have the day off.
Oh,
So
nice. Yeah. I'm planning on playing it on my flight to SGL.
yeah, you know, I really wanted to get back to a GDQ, and we missed out on it early this year, and we're planning on going next year. But come to find out that SGL is like the thing that all the Link to the Past people are going to, so we kind of missed the boat on that. But but
That's too bad. Yeah, it's ALTTP Con.
yeah. So we'll see you next fall, I guess.
Hell yeah. Will you still try to go to AGDQ 25?
No, probably not. I don't think there's going to be enough representation from the Link to the Past community because they're all going to SGL.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kick ass. You guys are gonna have a really good time there.
Yeah, it was really fun last year, and I feel like last year was the first time it was really linked to the past con, and then word spread, and so this year it's like even more so, and so everybody's sort of really going out of their way to make sure they could go this year. So it should be pretty sweet.
Definitely. And word just got to me like a little bit too late to make it happen. So, but yeah, definitely see you guys next year. As far as like current projects, I feel like I always have like 8 different projects going on at the same time. But I started. There's been a need for it for a very long time. There's been starts made and not followed through. I'm finally redoing the A Link to the Past beginner tutorial from
Oh
the ground up.
wow! Thank God.
It is fully edited. Or I'm sorry, it is fully recorded. It is halfway edited. And because of the situation I'm involved in now, it seems like something more urgent always comes up, especially with the Echoes launch now. And we're doing this big, like, 30-day speedrun challenge, and that's gonna be a whole thing. But the updated beginner tutorial is in the pipeline. We're pretty stoked for that.
That's awesome. Let me know if I can help with that.
It's pretty much done,
Yeah, fair.
but yeah, I can definitely show you what I've got so far. See
Yeah,
what you think.
I'd love to take a look.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that takes us up to the minute. Just Echoes of Wisdom waiting room.
Yeah, and so as you mentioned a minute ago, you've been learning Z1 in secret for I guess the past couple months or
Yeah,
month or so.
I wouldn't say in secret per se. It's just that I don't know. I haven't had any inclination to stream, I
Yeah.
guess. But it is what it is.
Well, that gives you because you wanted to learn the sort of like I guess main relatively glitchless category of all the Zelda games, which you've done Z1, Z2, Z3, uh, Wind Waker, Skyward Sword.
Mhm.
That's half of them, right? Have you done any of the others?
I very briefly dipped into Twilight Princess HD
Oh, right, yeah.
for the marathon over the summer. So I spent a solid week on that. It was like a 9 hour and 2 minute speed run. So I think the world record is like low 5.
Oh, yeah. So
Yeah, so it's just like
you're
I
not great
learned
at
how
it
to.
yet.
Yeah, I don't know. I kind of lost my motivation to stream at some point this year, and I haven't really found it again. But I have been doing a lot of grinding and developing things offline. So
That's cool to
you
hear.
know, I'm still here. I'm still making the things, and we have a lot of really exciting projects in the pipeline. So
That's awesome. I'll be excited to see them, or if you want to drop. I mean, you already dropped a couple, but if you have anything else you want to leak here, anything you want people to know about coming down the pike.
uh, not specifically, I guess, but we're gonna make official announcements about the Zelda Dungeon projects in the next couple months, hopefully by the end of the year here, and pretty excited to tell you more about what all that entails, but not going to be too specific because, like I said, I don't have any ownership of,
Yeah.
you know, it's bigger than me.
So you've now learned to speedrun a lot of games, at least half a dozen Zelda games. I don't know if there's others in there. And uh, I guess I'm just sort of curious about your relationship with that because your relationship with NMG in particular is like really intense. Like you were saying, it was distracting you from school. It was like sort of taking over all of your brain space. Um, but you've never really gone to that depth with any other games, from what I understand. Is that right?
No, not nearly. My second best game is Zelda 2, which I have a high 120 in that game, which I cracked the top 100 in that game. So
Not bad, yeah.
Yeah, not bad. And that's kind of what I'm going for, is to be like in that solidly intermediate space where I can feel like I can put a run together without feeling like I'm eminently in danger. Like, I want to be able to play Zelda 1 and feel like I can complete any given run, which apparently for that game is like a 32.
Ah, that game's fucking impossible.
It's impossible, dude. I swear.
Yeah, so do you just like, for me, I don't think that I ever want to like get that intensely involved with a game again. Like it takes a lot out of you. It's really expensive, in your time and energy and brain power. Do you feel the same way? Like do you have dreams of like getting, top 15 at whatever?
No, I definitely want to avoid,
You want to avoid it. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
yeah, getting to anything beyond the equivalent of like a sub 90 A Link to the Past. But I tend to find more joy in teaching people how to do things. And so I've decided to pursue that more broadly. I'm actually I finished a video a couple weeks ago which I made about Zelda 1. You can actually find it in the Zelda 1 Discord. I think it might be in the routing or the speed help channel, but it goes over in detail how I went from no experience in this game to getting a time of 41 minutes. And it only took me about 15 hours all in from the moment I first clicked on speedrun.com. And I did a complete breakdown of everything that I did to get to that skill level and presented it as like, if you want to learn a speedrun, here's what to do.
That's cool.
And eventually I would like to expand that and get deeper into like practice habits and mentality and just more general how to speedrun things.
That's an interesting idea. Can you give us like the 5 minute, not even 5 minute, 1 minute breakdown? What's the practice habit? What's the mentality? What's the stuff you think really works?
It's all about maximizing efficiency, right? So like when you get into deeper levels of speedrunning, you're learning to optimize, but it's all about learning to optimize how to optimize. If I could condense it down to like one thing. So I'm showing you how to get the most benefit for the least amount of effort. It's not necessarily about putting in less effort, but it's about learning how to maximize your efficiency so that you can do more with the effort you put in. And that's just a matter of like, what am I actually looking to find out? What am I looking to accomplish? What am I looking to skip? Like, Red Candle has so many things of like look at this pixel and this enemy drop chart, and it's like, well, I'm a beginner. This is for going into intermediate territory, so we're basically going to ignore everything here, and we'll circle back if it ends up being useful. But for now, like, all I want to do is start at this point on the screen and get to this point on the screen without dying.
Yeah, you got to sort of build up the amount of detail that you're taking in.
Yeah, precisely. And I always have liked to do this kind of thing where you like zoom all the way out, and like the bird's eye view is like, the names of the segments, what dungeons you're going to, and then you zoom in farther and farther. And like when I was doing my first speedruns, I was literally looking at Order of the Eight where they have the maps laid out and like where you go in the dungeon. And I didn't know the way, but I practiced in a way where I could look at those charts in real time while I was doing the dungeon, so I didn't have to memorize layouts. I can just like, I know I'm going to go to this room and collect the key here. I don't
Yeah,
actually I set myself up in a way that I didn't need to remember that.
yeah. The way I learned that game was I would go into a dungeon and I would go through the Order of the Eight map. I would just like save state at the beginning of the dungeon and go through the route. and then load my state and go through as much of it as I remembered, and then look at the map when I had to.
Mhm.
You do that a few times, you remember the route.
Yeah, but like when I finished my 41, I couldn't have told you which way to go in level 9 without any sort of reference.
No, yeah.
I don't really have anything particularly notable to add beyond that. That's kind of
No, I was gonna say something similar. Like, it sounds like what the things I want to get talking about people on this podcast, sort of their story, which we did, your current goals, which you're being a little cagey about, but told us some stuff. Sort of how you feel about speedrunning. I guess I did want to talk a little bit more about how you feel about the 124 hanging over your shoulder, hanging over your head, because that's like I from my experience, when I was close to a milestone, there's always this like tension for me of like, on the one hand, I don't want to just like it feels like unfinished business, but on the other hand, like I don't want to force myself to do something that hurts. Like if it hurts, stop doing it. You know what I mean? And so
yeah.
sort of like trying to find out which side of that line is actually the one that's right for you, I think is like pretty challenging. So sort of curious about how you think about that, or if you have a similar experience.
I definitely relate to both of those points because I don't need it badly enough that I'm willing to torment myself for it at this point because I've kind of accepted that uh, a lot of near misses, and it's really not in the cards for me to pursue it at the moment because I've got other things that are keeping my hands tied. But I do see room for after I do this marathon project that I told you about, where I want to kind of string together all of the main console games in one marathon speedrun, I could definitely see room for opening up like pursuing NMG for an indefinite amount of time because the only way I can truly see it happening is if I do a uncapped grind where I don't stop until it happens. By not allowing myself any sort of time pressure, I think that it takes away the possibility of failure in a way because if I don't hit my deadline, then I've failed, and that pressure makes it impossible to perform.
That's interesting. I was thinking I didn't think about that angle, but I was wondering if just the short timelines cause you to put too much time like per day, per week into it, which like leads to burnout. If you feel like you only have 3 weeks to do something, you're going to spend all your time on it and then get exhausted. Whereas if you feel like you have forever to do it, you only have to spend, you can do one run a night or whatever and not like, you know, burn out.
After I started welding school, I never had a big enough block of time dedicated to that to where I didn't feel significant time pressure.
Yeah.
And that's been a consistent trend for the last 3.5 years now, where I've learned that I didn't give myself enough space to make it happen. And in order for me to really get beyond that, it needs to be no time limit. I will go until I get this. And so far, I haven't had the luxury, but I would like to clear my schedule at some point and be like, okay, this is what I'm doing now.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you could do that. You just have other projects you're doing instead.
Exactly.
And maybe one day the 124 will reach the top of your priority list.
Exactly. And I will circle back around after a while, and that's something that I would really like to try to do. I definitely have unfinished business with that game.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, sounds like we've pretty much talked about everything we want to talk about. Do you have any last shout outs you want to do before we sign off?
Yeah, just all of the people that supported my journey along the way, uh, Fricker, Fruit Bats, and just wanted to say how grateful we are to have been able to produce something that has had this impact on the community the way FMG has, and uh, really proud of everybody that's done that deep dive and gotten 124s. And I always kind of quote what Blunt Bunny said a long time ago, uh, is that we can't pay it back because the people that taught us are already better. So the only thing we can do is pay it forward. So big shout out to everybody that inspired us to do what we do. And it's an honor to inspire the next generation.
Awesome. I think that's a really great way of putting it. All right. Well, thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
You mentioned this just like off the cuff. I don't know, 5 years ago. You were like, "That's deep lore. Like nobody knows about that." What? Tell us the story. What does mooglemod mean?
Okay. So the reason I never told anybody is because it's so beyond stupid. But I was homeschooled, so uh, from like fifth grade to 10th grade. So I spent a lot of time at my home on the computer, on the IGN boards, and I was a huge fan of the Pokemon boards on there. And they would do this thing back in the day when Generation 2 came out, where they had this text-based Pokemon battle situation. Like they would do it in, or you could log into this IRC channel and make your team battle your Pokemon. And uh, we need to get into really deep Moogle lore here because my mom was in her uh, fundamentalist Christian era where we were not allowed to have Pokemon because uh, it was teaching evolution and witchcraft and things of that nature. So we're going down that rabbit hole with this. So I would get my fix for gaming and socializing by talking about Pokemon on the IGN boards, and I didn't own a copy of Ruby and Sapphire when it came out, but I was so dedicated to the scene that I was able to put together a competitive team and battle on the IRC bots. And I ended up making my own chat board specifically for my friend group to battle Pokemon. And one of my mods was this guy, Mr. Blue 17, who was a huge Final Fantasy nerd. And he was kind of like a older brother type influence to me. Really looked up to this guy, and his title on the board was the Pimpin' mooglemod. So a few years later, I needed a username for something, and I was like, "That's cool. I'm stealing that." But it was such a dumb story that I never told anybody.
That's great. What did it mean? Was it because he's a moderator? Why was he the Moogle mod? What? I still have
Yeah,
all the same questions.
he was the moderator of our Pokemon battle chat board.
Was it called the Pimpin' Moogle?
I'm gonna find the original image.
Oh my god. So excited.
This was his profile picture.
Oh yeah.
So I just
Wow.
completely co-opted his identity and was like, "Yeah, that's cool. I'm stealing that."
That's great. Well, how long is it? Do you know? Can you still get in touch with him? Like, is he totally gone?
He's totally gone. I haven't been in contact with this person since 2004.
So he'll
So
never know that you stole his identity.
never, unless unless I do something where I get an absurd amount of press, like do a GDQ appearance.
Right. Maybe.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's the whole thing. So
Awesome. I'm so glad I
origin
finally
story
know.
there.